Terem. Terem.
So I'm really excited to have Bala, and I'm going to not get the last name right, so I'm going to say Bala K, here with me to talk about API products and API product management. And so, Bala, you've had 25 years in senior product roles. You're the Chief Product Officer at Google Moonshot Tidal right now. But I think for our audience, the thing that's like really, really interesting is you were the head of product for Google's API management, which includes Apogee. And what I'm going to love about our conversation, I think, is you were like product manager for an API to build APIs. So for people out there building APIs, this is going to get really meta. I feel like, but no, in all seriousness, like you spent a good couple of years really working with people building APIs, thinking about APIs. So I'm just really excited about having a chat today. Yeah, nice to meet you, Bala.
Same here, Scott. Thank you. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I think I always latch onto any opportunity where we can spread the message of APIs and how it makes life easier at the end of the day for not only a better customer experience but also for the developers. And I think it allows everybody to get the maximum advantages of any technology they're trying to implement. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, no, also, and look, what I'm going to do is we're going to go through a bunch of questions just for the audience. We're going to really just have a bit of a conversation about API. So to kick it off, why should an organization have an API? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So it's a good first principle question, right? Like, so the way I kind of think about this is that organizations inherently have friction, right? And there are a lot of things that cause that friction. The one area we could reduce friction is by having APIs. And the reason APIs help reduce friction is that they are a very clear technical artifact and also a contract, and that allows people to scale without having to talk to each other all the time. And why is that important? And I think, as we all know, things are moving pretty fast. Like I'm sure we all experienced in the last 18 months, our worlds have changed thanks to this unfortunate pandemic. But things changed pretty rapidly, and people were able to continue doing things they wanted to do. And a large part of that comes down to how fast can you move and how easy it is to build things or change things. And to me, APIs are the fundamental building blocks for doing that from a technology point of view. And that's why I think APIs are important for any organization. And I also feel genuinely that APIs are also much better at making collaboration go faster. So APIs kind of make it easier to take any kind of awkwardness in collaborating between teams, between companies, because it allows you to test, experiment, do things which normally otherwise will take a lot of time and energy and effort, and makes it easier and possible for people to do that. So that's something I love about why APIs are important, and why I think every organization should be thinking about APIs as a fundamental kind of strategy, and also a technical artifact to really be, agile or be transformative or be nimble, whatever the terminology that you prefer to use.
So just to pick up on this a bit, I see a lot of, and we can maybe walk through some categories of the why, because the why is, I see like a financial institution like a bank or an insurer, and you can kind of tell for a lot of them that API is a bit of an afterthought. Like, we've got to have one to tick a box, a regulatory box, or we've got to have one for blah 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 reason. What's the why for them for removing friction? Because for some of them, they want to create friction when it comes to their data and their customers. So yeah, say I'm a bank or an insurer saying, why would I do this?
So I always start with the first thing, which is that I think organizationally you need to have less friction because you want to serve your customers well at the end of the day, right? Whether you're a bank, insurance company, or a restaurant, it doesn't matter. I think you want the friction to be really low so that you can serve your customers really well. And the customer is not getting served because you created barriers within your organization or increased friction. I don't see any way how that can be beneficial for any business, like period, right? That's it.
Yeah, you might keep the wall for a little bit, but you're kind of going against the tide of the way the world's moving, and customers just
Exactly.
They want a few clicks and they want to get their data into the new banking app that tells them where they're spending things. They don't want you to kind of block them and force them down your path.
Yeah. So a good example, since we're talking about banking, is that let's say I have a bank and the bank does not have a mobile app. It's a no-show for me. Like it's like a non-starter, right? So now the reason they don't have a mobile app could be that they don't have an easy way to build a mobile app. And the reason for that is they didn't actually have good APIs designed for building a mobile app. So that kind of gives you a glimpse of like, okay, like right there you have a customer problem. And most of the people are on the phones. They would like to transact or at least do something in terms of interaction with the bank on the mobile phone. Now you kind of cut out that entire option, right? That's kind of one example.
Yeah.
The second example is, let's say you and I are a customer of a bank, and we want to kind of pay our utility bills or some other bills using our bank account. Now, if you don't have APIs, there's going to be a very low chance that you're able to go and attach to some bill payment system, whether it's your city's bill payment services or something else private. And now again, you like, okay, I have like somehow I got my money from my employer into my bank account, but I can't do all the things I need to do in an easy way. So again, as a customer, I'm going to be pretty, upset about that facility not being there, right?
And
so those are a couple of examples of why APIs kind of are important.
Yeah.
For any customer, any organization to serve their customers better.
And there's also this one of like, it's a real cost of investment to build these. I know there's a bit of not made here mentality of like, oh no, we'll build the I'm just thinking banking or insurance. It's like, no, we'll build the app that tells them how to spend better. And as a customer, I actually don't want that. I want to go use the cool new startup that's built some AI thing and is iterating really fast and has a great experience. I want you to give the data for them because I'm going to stick with you, Mr. Bank. And also from a financial point of view, the bank doesn't have to, don't have to pick winners. You don't need to know which user experience is going to work. Let startups wear that cost. Let VCs wear that cost, and let them work nicely with you. So, and now just kind of, so that's like, and that the same logic that you've shared can easily be applied to like any traditional business in industrial or something like that. That same logic. Now, what about government and public organizations? Like, what's the why for them?
I think there are two examples I can give you. One, I don't know much about how it is happening in Australia, but here I think everything around healthcare, especially during the pandemic, in terms of ability for people to find locations for vaccine information, data around infection rates, unfortunately the death rates of COVID and things like that. All of that data has been fairly, exposed in standardized, in a standardized format with APIs. So you see this amazing amount of volunteer work that's happening, where people are building mobile apps and websites to provide information in terms of either data visualization or hyper-local information on what citizens should do. And now that vaccines are coming out, there are so many applications people are building to help people find the nearest vaccine location. And if their vaccines are running out, how to get notified when the vaccines are available, how to set up an appointment. And all of this is possible because there's a very good way to have the ecosystem build what they need to. Because especially during a pandemic, I don't think we have all the resources that one company or one organization or one government can put in. But having a system like that and allowing for secure access of some of this data through APIs, I think it's helped a lot of what I would call social good or good volunteer-driven technology innovation, which was much needed during this time, right? And then I remember, in fact, during one of my last trips, I don't know when we get to travel again. I hope we can do so soon. I distinctly remember coming down to Sydney and meeting with the government agency in New South Wales, and they were doing some digital services for citizens. And if I remember correctly, it was something to do with the digital driver's license initiative or something like that. And it was fascinating to watch how they were taking something very old school, which has been there for years, right, in every country, about having a driver's license and making it a digital tool. And that is all possible thanks to APIs. And to me, those are the kind of innovation I think customers want now and citizens want. So for the government, I think it's equally important because everybody right now, I think if I want to check some utility service or something from the government, I am going to look up, either search for it, go to an app, or go on a website. And the more we can make that easy and surface the data easily via APIs, I think we're all going to benefit from that. So I see a big why for government serving the citizens much better and creating an amazing ecosystem where people can co-innovate with them, fundamentally possible only with APIs.
And just what's kind of interesting about that last point is like a lot of tech companies and like non-tech companies, they're already interacting with the citizen at the point where it matters. So the digital driver's license is like pubs or clubs that need to admit someone. If their software is integrated with the government, then you reduce all this privacy risk, and they can just integrate with the API, and you can kind of let 1,000 flowers flourish. Is the beauty of it. You can let everyone do a lot of ideas. I think the other kind of you've touched on like the good side, the upside, so to speak, and then I'm thinking of the budget side because that's often where this comes to. It's like it's actually cheaper. It's cheaper to put an API out and let the market and citizens, the volunteers, people love building stuff on government services because they're contributing to the community, and you can allow that to happen through an API rather than the government wearing the cost of whatever that service might be. And to be honest, you're probably going to get something more innovative in the end because everyone's able to experiment and you're drawing on the minds of the market. We've kind of touched on the why, which is fantastic. Where I want to go to next is this concept of often API gets thought of as that's just something I leave to the technical people. But my experience has been, and then Apogee and Google are big proponents of an API and the best APIs in the world, thinking of Stripe as a prime example, or Twilio or something like that, they're API first companies. They think of APIs as a product. And, why do we need to think about APIs as a product?
I would start, I guess, two specific things in my mind. One is, I think the APIs are a means to the end, and the end is typically some business outcome which is benefiting, or which is a result of benefits to customers. Who are the customers, right? So that's how I think about it. So your example of Stripe, why is every e-commerce site or app using Stripe? Is they want to make the customer experience of a checkout, of using any payment method, extremely simple and friction-free, right? So that the entire buying process of whatever you're buying on whichever app or website is almost like frictionless, to the point that you're not wasting too much time figuring out which credit card did I put all the information correctly, did I make an error, things like that, and make it super easy, because the businesses want to make that last step absolutely friction-free for themselves, and the customer, right? Now, and then you go back one step. What Stripe is trying to do is saying their customers are first and foremost the developers. The developers who are building these applications or e-commerce websites, saying, hey, we will make your life easy so that you can drive the right experience for your customers, right? So to me, those are 1-2 kind of good punches, right? One, how do you optimize for the best experience, best outcome for the customer, which drives business benefit? And then how do you get there with the least amount of effort from a developer point of view? So every time we think about API as a product, I think we have to make sure that we think about it, in terms of who the customer is. And for the API product, the user is actually the developer. It could be internal developers, it could be partners, it could be any developer. And then the impact or the measure of success is really whatever the outcome you're driving, is it happening, is it possible or not, right? And that is what you need to measure, because at the end of the day, if you make developers' life easy, but you're not achieving the outcome you want for the business, it doesn't really matter. So these two have to go hand in hand. And the beauty about this is that if you do think about the APIs as products, then you apply all the rigor that we always apply to any product, right? Which is that you measure the impact. If it's not working, then you understand why it's not working. You talk to the users, in this case, developers, and understand why they're excited about the product or not excited about the product, what can be fixed, what can be improved. And that's what you need to do. You have to have a discipline. On the other side, the reason you want to think about it as a product is once you declare it as a product, then people are using it. People are depending on it. And that means not only the developers are depending on it, there is some downstream impact somebody is using. So for example, you're using some app, let's say a Starbucks app for ordering coffee. You don't care who's designed the API, which developer is using it, whether you have Stripe in that for checkout or not. You don't care for anything. On the day you want to order a coffee and you're running late for a meeting, if that thing doesn't work, you are going to be upset with that company, right? That's all matters. And so to that effect, you have to treat this product as a mission critical product and ensure that it is working and it is absolutely serving the needs. And number two, if you're making any changes, you have to make sure that there's a very thoughtful process for moving on to the next version of the API, making sure that there's a very good communication around that. There's a good, kind of bridging between the V1 and the V2 of the API. And ultimately, there's enough benefit for the V2 of the API for somebody to use it. Just like, we all buy some, version of our TVs and cars and everything else. And the reason you upgrade the car or a TV or a computer is there is some explicit benefit that you want out of that. And APIs are no different. So if you start thinking about it like a product, you apply all those rigors. What's the end customer experience that's being driven out of the product? Who are you serving? How do you make sure that they are mission critical and you're not breaking their end-to-end experience? And then ultimately, make sure that you're learning continuously and adjusting and improving what you need to improve, like any product does.
And where's the best place for this kind of leadership of the API as a product? Where does that sit in the organization?
Yeah, I've seen this happen in two places. One is I think there is either opportunity for leadership in the product org itself, and sometimes it's engineering and product org are the same. Sometimes it's engineering and product management org separately. That's one very good place to say that. Just like we have like a product manager, so for example, let's say you're to be talking about banking, right? So let's say that there is a retail banking service, there is a product manager for that. Somebody wakes up thinking about what are the things we need to provide in retail banking for our retail banking customers. That person, if they're technical enough, they can be actually the retail banking API product manager, right? If they're not, then I think they can have a partner who is actually technical and who can understand the business side and the technical side. So they become the retail banking services API product manager, as an example, right? There could be similarly for lending, or there could be somebody for corporate banking or money markets or brokerage and things like that. So you can break it up that way. But I do think that the product manager who thinks about these APIs has to have enough context about the service, about the customers, and also understand who the users are going to be today and tomorrow. Because today it might be all the bank developers building their mobile app or web app. But tomorrow, if you open up that as an ecosystem, then you need to think about, are we doing the right things for them? Do we have the right contracts in place? And when I say contract, not legal contracts, but in terms of our commitment, our SLAs, those kind of contracts. And then if there is a monetization model, are we very clear how and when we're going to charge these developers who are not our employees for use of these APIs? So somebody needs to think all this through as a product manager, along with a very good eye on the technical design of the API, really making sure that that works for any developer, supporting different frameworks so that any developer, whether it's mobile or web, is extremely happy with the product, API product, so they can use it.
And then that kind of last was really, really interesting to me, and that the often what I come across at least is you think API and the tendencies to go, oh, well, like our engineers can just push one of those out next week. We'll just have something out, and it's, well, they can, but the thing with API to really do it right and to nail all the things you're talking about is you need someone thinking about, are we monetizing? What's the future look like? What does the experience look like? And all that stuff goes around it to make the great APIs successful. It's all that. Do we have the right documentation? If we're going to put an endpoint out, how many guides are we going to create to let someone use it? Is like can someone self-consume? Can they get access to test data? All that is essential to a great API, and just the API working, delivering value, all that kind of thing. So it's, what do you say to someone who is sitting there saying like, oh no, I just give it to the, and I used to be an engineer, so I all the engineers listening and technical folks, it's like, what do you say where they're like, oh no, we'll just we give it to the technical team or the engineering team and just let them put out what they need to without the product, oh, we don't need that product thinking, we know what we need to build, we'll just go and build that. What do you say to convince an EGM, like a general manager or something, who's taking that line of thinking?
So first of all, I think it's totally fine if an engineer wants to take ownership of an API product. I don't think there's anything wrong in it, as long as they do two things. One is they're acutely aware that the customer for that API is not them, but some other engineer or developer on the other side. So as long as they have the empathy, which they can because they are engineers themselves,
it's
a very good chance that they know what a crappy API looks like, what a good API looks like. So hopefully they build a good API because some peer of theirs is going to use it, and she might say, wow, this is amazing. I like this, right? So that is one. The second piece is they need to make sure that they're able to go beyond that technical design and ensuring that the user is able to use, which is the engineer, to thinking about what are the implications of how this is going to be used, right? If the attitude is like, hey, I've designed a really good API, I'm documenting it, I don't really care how you use it, is also a little bit of a half-baked option. Because you need to understand what the developer is trying to do, because then you can learn from that and say, oh, okay, I didn't think about those use cases. Maybe I need to do something different here, right? That is the important part. And if they can do that, it's great. And then the last part is, some engineers may or may not like this, is to really think about, is there a business model here? How do I think about the business model? And the engineer is like, okay, this is the part that I'm not absolutely interested in. Then they need to partner with somebody who's really good in doing that, and that's fine. But it does have to cover all those aspects. And if people don't have all those aspects, then I think they need to figure out, okay, how do we divide and conquer between like an engineering person versus a product person, or so, and so on and so forth.
And just on the monetization, what are the things you'd throw out as like the top couple of ways to monetize the API? There's the obvious one, which is charge for usage, but that's kind of like the easy one. I often see a lot of organizations thinking like, oh, we're putting it out there because we've got all these other services we charge for. Do we charge, whether it's like, maybe they're a SaaS company, maybe they're a bank, how do we monetize the API? I'm just curious about your kind of like.
Yeah. So the first thing I try to tell, customers when I meet them is, you're not charging for the APIs. You're charging for the service, and the utility of the service is being consumed via an API, right? So it's almost like if I'm watching a movie, I'm paying for the movie. Now, if I want to use that movie via an API, I'm still paying for the movie. I'm not just using the API for the sake of it, right?
Yeah.
So what are the services, right? So if I'm using the API for some banking application, it is basically the actual banking service that I'm paying for via an API. So I think people have to just get very conscious about how they think about this, and not as, oh, we are monetizing the API itself, but it's actually the services of high value. One of my colleagues used to say a good analogy would be, let's say you have a petrol station, and I'm using petrol because I think I grew up in India and we used to call it petrol as well, or a gas station for a US audience. And you can have the best gas station and the best snack outlet out there where you can go buy any kind of soft drinks and snacks. But if you don't have the gas, nobody's coming. So that's how what I think about it, saying that your APIs are not as useful or as monetizable if the service itself is not great. So the API is not going to make the service magical. The value has to be in the service first.
It's almost,
and then you can do any kind of monetization, and you hit upon something which is very simple. You charge for via the API. It could be a simple count of API. It could be a percentage cut in terms of the transaction value. It could be a subscription, because some of the calls may be just a pure subscription volume, because it's not high value in terms of per transaction cost. So there are multiple ways to do that, but start with the value of the service, and then figure out how to translate that back into the API in terms of monetization.
it's almost like another channel in that sense. In that, it used to be that you would go into the shop to get your banking done or your transaction with the government done. Then it went to when still going to do it on the web. Then when mobile was big, everyone went, "Oh, we've got to have a mobile to interact with." And now machine to machine is huge, and so API becomes a really important channel because everyone's got software platforms now that need to talk to each other.
Yeah. Well, I think the point you make is equally important, which is I think the ultimate, objective that anyone should have is how do you really build a platform? And when I say platform, it specifically means like how do you build a platform which is very easy to kind of build upon internally within the organization. So like if a new team wants to do something, they can easily go and build it. If you want to partner with somebody, they can easily do something with you. Or if you want to open it up so that others can come and innovate with you, you can easily do that. So ultimately, I think APIs become an important tool towards building a platform. And how do you project your company as a platform so that people can come, engage with you, and build something meaningful, whether it's internal employees, partners, or other third-party vendors who want to plug and play with you. Platform becomes the key. And I think by now, every business almost you can see that you have to be fundamentally a platform. And it doesn't mean that you're going to overtake the world, but it's just that you make it easy for doing the business. And when you make it easy for doing the business and you serve your customer well and you promote innovation, I think then you're onto something. You will hit some big ideas along the way, which will transform the way you're doing whatever you're doing. And that's what I think everybody is striving for. Like all the startups disrupting any vertical you take, whether it's banking or retail, the reason they're coming up with all this is that they believe fundamentally that APIs and platforms are table stakes, and then they figure out, okay, what are the things we're going to disrupt and how are we going to think about it differently, which is the unique part. And I think we get to play a role in that if people are able to understand why APIs are important and why they need to manage it as a product, and then how can actually they extract value from that for the outcomes for their customers and themselves.
Oh, I think that's a really good line to finish on. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thanks for sharing like all the insights that you've built up working on API over the years. It's just awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
No worries.